What's up, everyone? I hope you're all having a good day today. And today, as you can see, I am back into the speed painting kick. I know I've been doing a lot of these speed paintings lately. I've been really enjoying them. And I realized that maybe I should just kind of define what a speed painting is really quick for those of you who may not know. Maybe give some tips and some of my thoughts on them as well. But before I get into all that, today I actually had an idea for what I wanted to paint. It's still going to be from imagination, but I have a bit of a clear idea of what I want this time around. And it's going to be this town square, very gothic, very Victorian. You can see I'm already throwing down my blues and purples that I've been using a lot lately. Still really enjoying these colors at the moment and trying to experiment more with them. You can see I start off with a lot of solid colors, really kind of graphical elements right now. Just trying to lay in my general silhouettes. I'm not really worried about much like the design and perspective and stuff like that. It's really just getting some information down so I could see. I mentioned before, when I go straight into painting, even though I'm doing it a lot more lately, painting that is, I'm still having a problem not visualizing things clearly until I get it down on the canvas, which results in me having to do a lot of corrections. Like here, I started it too big, the scale is way off, and I recognize it really quick, but I decided to just keep working and getting information down. I'm going to correct it really soon here. But yeah, it's just something I gotta work on more. I should probably go back to drawing before I start painting. But you know, what can I say? I'm still really hell-bent on trying to jump straight into painting, and I really do think that to get better, I have to just keep banging my head up against the wall until I get better. But I do admittedly need to be more conscientious of what I'm trying to work on, and maybe slow down a little bit in the beginning. But we'll get there. It's all a learning process. Okay, back to what a speed painting is. So right up front, I see a lot of it on YouTube and just kind of discussed in art communities, confusing a time-lapse painting for a speed painting. So recording yourself create a piece of art for, dozens of hours, 8 hours, a long time, and then speeding it up, that is just a time-lapse. That is not a speed painting. A speed painting, by its definition, is giving yourself a time limit to finish a painting. And I've said in the past that most artists tend to limit speed painting to 1 to 3 hours. It's going to vary depending on the artist. I personally think that the cutoff is probably around 3 hours to what I would call a speed painting. After that, it's really just a painting, right? But that is where you start getting into semantics, that's up to you, how long you want to define it. But yeah, most people that I see, especially professionals, they'll bust out a speed painting in an hour, 2 hours tops. I usually go up to 3 because I am not as good as those people. Really quick, going back to the painting. Now that I've got it a little bit more corrected, you can see it looks more like a street corner now. I'm playing with the idea of having this like megalithic cathedral, maybe church, something. I don't know, some sort of gothic architecture in the background there. And it's really just not working for me. I'm trying a lot of different things to see if I like it. It's obviously super rough right now, and I'm just playing with the idea. I'm still mostly using the mixer brush as well. I'm still using it more as kind of a stamp. I'm not using the mixing properties of the brush as much. I don't care for that aspect of it as much as I like making all these artifacts and random noises with it. It's just hard to control, and I haven't quite nailed down how I personally like using it yet, but we're getting there. We're getting closer for sure. I eventually decide to cut my losses with that church thing in the background. It just wasn't going to work out, and the time spent trying to get it to work ultimately wasn't going to be worth it. It probably would have worked out better if I just tried to imply that it was back there instead of drawing it so, I don't know, visually prominent, I guess. But oh well, it's not that big of a deal. Just paint it out really quick. And I'm kind of to the point where I just need to polish everything up. It's time to start figuring out some of the architecture details, some of the storytelling elements like little people, a little horse carriage being pulled, anything else I can think of. I'm kind of at a loss as to what to add for detail because on the one hand, I'm really trying to go with implying a lot of details. I'm trying to get things to look more painterly in my work overall. So it's a little rough when I'm working from imagination. This is really the part of the process that I should have absolutely pulled up some references, at least some architecture references, so I could kind of get a better idea. But that is not why I did this. Again, did it to really push myself like I always do. So we'll see what I could come up with. While I'm cleaning up the painting and just trying to imply details everywhere, let's talk a little bit more about speed painting. I know that the first thought that most artists have is most likely, why give myself a time limit? I'm not in a rush. Time doesn't matter. You shouldn't rush art. Good art takes time. And frankly, you're right. Good art does take time, and I don't think you should rush. I'm actually against rushing, especially if you're a newer artist or you're struggling with something in particular. I do think that you should take your time and go slow and at your own pace, and you should definitely not worry about how long you spend on something, and you shouldn't compare how long you spent on something to how long it took someone else to do something. But that isn't the point of a speed painting. The speed painting's not necessarily like, look at me, I could paint something super fast. And I know that that kind of comes across with some artists, or some other artists tend to take it that way, and there's certainly some of that there. I would just drown out that noise though, because there's always going to be people like that. But really, a speed painting is nothing more than an exercise. It's taking everything that you've learned and using all the technical skills that's required to go into a painting, or maybe if you're just doing a sketch, it's taking all those skills and just compressing them in such a short amount of time that you don't really have time to waste to think about the non-important stuff. You're really just focusing on the bare essentials to get your idea across. And that's really useful. Like maybe you weren't working from imagination like I am. Maybe you're doing a direct study, but you're giving yourself a time limit to do it. I mean, that's still a speed painting. Let's say you only have an hour to copy something like a Sargent. You really only have time to focus on the details, right? You're going to notice the shadow shapes as fast as possible, the silhouettes as fast as possible. Where is the focal point at? Because I only have time to really render that. The composition, what are the most important elements? What's the most important colors? What values need to go where? All of this obviously very quickly boosts your observational skills because you're on such a short time limit. And then you still have to transfer all this information to the canvas. You really have to worry about your brush economy. You have to keep in mind how many brush strokes it's going to take to achieve this effect, or capture this feeling, or mix these colors. You're teaching yourself better brush economy. And the benefit of that isn't only saving time, but you're starting to develop more of a sense of your style. You start to better learn how to convey your interpretation of an observation. With all of this in mind, I personally think that speed painting is a super powerful tool. I think it's an exercise that we should all try to do at least weekly. And hopefully I've convinced you that it's worth doing. At this point, I've basically repainted the majority of this painting. I've resized it, I've morphed things around here and there. I've painted people in and then painted them out and then put them back in. I'm struggling to figure out what kind of element, like storytelling elements, that I want in there. The perspective is still pretty borked, and I'm barely starting to kind of correct that a little bit. Overall, this is one that would have definitely benefited from getting some sort of foundation down before I started to paint. And then of course, I really should have looked up some architecture beforehand. I don't do a lot of architecture as it is, and while I've definitely done a lot of studies in the past, it's not something that's deeply ingrained into my visual library. So I was really struggling with just figuring out what to fill the scene with. I think that by the end, it reads well enough, but yeah, I admittedly definitely could have used some reference on this one. While the painting is coming to its end and I'm just kind of fine-tuning everything and putting in the final details everywhere, I thought that I would share some of my advice on how to get the most out of your speed painting. And to be honest, this can be applied to just generally studying art in the first place. It doesn't need to be limited to just speed painting. Speed painting is just a term that is thrown around a lot, and I'm certainly throwing it around a lot. But honestly, just studying art kind of falls under this whole blanket category, I think. Okay, so my first piece of advice is not to speed paint. Wait, what? Well, I don't think you should speed paint until you're ready. Just because you see someone doing it, most likely a professional, someone much better than I, you're gonna see some incredible stuff, you're gonna go try to do it, and it's gonna be really discouraging. So I'd wait until you've already got some basics down, some fundamentals down, maybe a couple of years in. I didn't start doing it until several years in. I mean, I tried it and then got discouraged, but I don't know. If you're not someone who gets discouraged easily, then I'd say go for it. Just go easy on yourself, have fun with it, and if it's not working out for you, then don't feel bad. Just try it another time. Come back to it later. Well, what about if you feel like you're ready to speed paint? Well, that's great. My biggest piece of advice to you is probably the same advice I'd give to anyone going into doing a study, and that is set your goals before you start. And I'm talking before every single piece of art that you make. If you've been following my videos, you'll notice that at the start of them, I always try to talk about what I wanted to achieve going into it. And that's not just something that I'm saying in retrospect for the video. I'm sitting down before I start every single thing that I do, thinking about what I want to work on before I go into it. Like looking at these last 3 speed paintings that I've done, my goals have been pretty simple. I'm really just sitting down and having fun working from imagination. I'm not expecting something super amazing to come out of it. Like, I know that I'm just pushing my creativity. I know that I want to learn to mixer brush, so I'm purposely playing with that more, all these textures, all these colors, and I'm hoping that I end up with something good at the end, of course, but the end result isn't really what's interesting me. I just want to have fun in the process and see if I can learn anything along the way. And because I'm going in knowing that, the expectations are set, and I know what to focus on in the middle of the process. So maybe all that still sounds a little too vague for you. Well, let's say you're a newer artist or you're struggling with something specific. I would recommend doing like a study, give yourself like an hour to do it, and think about what you're weak on. Maybe your colors are weak, so don't worry about anything else. Just try to get the colors as close to your reference as you possibly can within an hour. Maybe the likeness doesn't come out very good. Maybe the line work is bad. Maybe your brush economy wasn't very good. But hey, at the end of the hour, the colors looked pretty damn on point. That's a win. You achieved your goal. Success. Move on to the next one. Maybe you're trying to focus on like your lights and your darks, your values. So you focus more on shape design. What are the shadow shapes in this reference? Let me try to capture that as accurately as I can and not really worry about everything else. Or maybe you want to work from imagination, but you want to use references. So you bring up some references and your goal is, I want to combine these 3 things to make something unique and me within the next hour or 2. You see, just like studying anything else, a speed paint can be all these different things. And all you're really doing, the only thing that differentiates it from anything else, any other exercise, is putting a time limit on it. And I know that the time limit seems super arbitrary, but I think that the more you start actually doing it, you'll realize that that time limit is actually a godsend. So long as you're going in with a goal-oriented approach, it's really going to help you focus on exactly what you need in that moment. And finally, I wouldn't worry about the pressure of sharing them. I feel like most artists don't share things like speed paints and thumbnails and stuff like that. Most of what we see shared online is typically from professionals or super experienced artists, so of course it looks great, and no matter what, it's going to have a lot of experience behind it, so it'll likely look good. I'm actually not that comfortable sharing a lot of what I share, but I do enjoy making it and the videos, and it's a good way to keep me motivated and kind of on track to make sure that I keep going. It's kind of like a motivational factor, and I do hope to build a community around it eventually. So I feel like this is the way to get there, and I don't think that you need to worry about that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, that's for you to decide. But I really wouldn't put that kind of pressure on myself unless there was a good reason for it. Yeah, that's for you to decide. And yeah, I hope this little talk helped you. Hope it opened your mind up to the possibilities and the benefits of speed painting. I hope you all go out there and paint to your heart's content. Well, I certainly had a lot to say in this one. In the end, the painting took me about 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours, 45 minutes or so. I was interrupted a lot during the recording of this one, so there was a lot of dead air time that I had to cut out. But overall, I like it. I do think that, like I said, I could have benefited a lot from using some references, or even at least establishing maybe a sketch first, so that way I didn't have to spend so much time redrawing and reorganizing things over and over again. This is another one where I definitely lost a lot of time doing that. So in the end, there was a mad dash of trying to get some visual interest going with the storytelling, with the people and the horse carriage and this water fountain thing that I just threw in there at the end because I couldn't figure out what to really put there. And yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm learning more of the mixer brush. I'm learning more about myself as an artist. Overall, it is, in my opinion, another win. Success. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Let me know if any of my advice or tips helped you or changed your mind at all, or if you disagree with me completely. You know, I'm interested in hearing the opposite side of that conversation as well. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think of the speed painting, and I better get started on the next one, so I will see you next time.